Michaela, could you try and explain how you understand Rudolf Steiner's contribution to medicine? What has he introduced? What is new? A nice, easy question to start with.
Yeah, a very
also,
precious
to what
one.
extent is he drawing on wisdom that we've forgotten? I mean, is that an element in it too? Yeah.
Well, I studied Rudolf Steiner with this question. Why do we need that? Is the anthroposophic view of the human being, nature, social life really worth to be integrated into medicine? And I found that it makes a huge difference to integrate anthroposophy and not to integrate anthroposophy. So I will try to make it very short, because the anthroposophic aspect is not a new content. It is a methodology. It is a new way to look at things. And that makes it very interesting and also so flexible to bring this anthroposophic aspect not only to mainstream medicine, academic medicine, but also to homeopathy, even to traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine. So whatever medicine or medical system you have, you can look from an anthroposophic aspect to it.
You mean that it's enriching those traditions?
It is not only enriching, it gives a new light, so a methodological new aspect. And when you ask me what is this methodological aspect for, then it is the insight that the human being is a spiritual being, and that, well, this is not unique. Not only anthroposophists are saying the human being is a spiritual being, but anthroposophists are clearly saying what do they mean with spiritual. So Steiner defines his spirituality concept extremely precise, and that gives the possibility very specifically to enlarge everything and to get new insights out of that. Because Steiner's concept of spirituality is that every human thought is a spiritual power. That what you think will be reality of tomorrow. That thinking is not just a cloudy thing. That thinking is the driver of evolution. And he has a remarkable new paradigm for medicine, and that it is what is my most favorite aspect of anthroposophic medicine. I can show this to you in this beautiful gesture you find in many Buddha sculptures, that you have these hands like a seed, and then you have this gesture. Yeah, in many sculptures you have such a meditative gesture. And this is a picture for the etheric forces, for the life forces. And Steiner discovered that what we carry in our thoughts as potential, as activity, is, let me say it very short, eternal life. And that what we have as biological life is incarnated intelligence, incarnated spirit, incarnated wisdom, acting as natural laws, as body wisdom, as whatever we find with what? Through our thoughts as wisdom in nature. So Steiner developed the concept that what we acknowledge as so-called facts, mathematical laws, who are running the nature, who are running the computers, the yes and no, and so on, that this sort of, let me say, incarnated intelligence, inherent intelligence, or incorporated intelligence is the same, only without matter we carry in thoughts. So that there is one spirit acting out, evolving this whole evolution, which is a huge intelligence, and only the human being can carry this in an individual form in its thinking, but everywhere you find it acting and manifesting and realizing in wherever you look. So if you have this concept, thinking is the spiritual power and is also life, then you understand psychosomatics, why thinking can heal, why meditation is healthy, why bad thoughts are affecting people. You do not know this only, you understand, and you can also work with that concretely in healing, in concepts. But also when you have remedies from nature, minerals, plants, healing plants, you understand the spirit. You understand the effect also on the consciousness, on various parts of the body. So we study very concretely, very scientific, what works in the nature and corresponds with nature processes in our physical nature, and on the other hand, what can we contribute by helping the people to live more consciously, more meaningful, more healthily in all their various life circumstances. So that is the more general background. But concretely, we have 5 principles. We see the human being can become ill, and 5 healing pathways to help them. The first is, shall I just
Please, yeah.
go through? The first is purely physical. Physical body, hereditary, substance, everything which manifests through the senses, the physical body in its physical environment. So we have a lot of medical problems just coming from an unhealthy environment affecting the physical body, or we have hereditary problems affecting the health state of the person. But we also have the huge domain when, for example, accidents are coming and we need intensive care. So the whole surgery, intensive care medicine, but also all the mainstream physiological diagnostics and technical tools just to understand the physical body and the way it works. That is the basis of anthroposophic medicine. But we understand all intensive care work, all the symptomatic working remedies from this spiritual aspect. We do not only use aspirin or an antibiotic, we ask ourselves, what are we really doing? What is the effect? And is it really necessary in this case? Or, for example, if you use antibiotics from an anthroposophic point of view, you use them only if the body is too weak to mobilize its own immunological reaction. Then we help with antibiotics. If we feel the body is strong enough, then we support the body's self-healing capacity, because we know from mainstream research that antibiotics are weakening the immune competence. So we just take this if necessary. And to make this decision when physical support is really necessary and it's not enough to do it out of one's own capacities, then we make an anthroposophic decision. So that is more a methodological aspect, because we as anthroposophic physicians, I'm a pediatrician, we are mainstream trained, regular physicians. But through anthroposophy, I feel myself more as a critical mainstream physician, not using everything because I have learned this, but looking very carefully if it's really the best in this case, in this moment. And I look also to all the influences coming through the senses, through nutrition and through education, if this is healing or not healing for the body. So it is an enormous enrichment to see the way the body is affected or influenced by the environment, but also how to encourage the immune competence by encouraging self-healing processes in this physical body. And that brings me already to the next aspect, what we name the etheric or life organization or self-healing aspect, that we look how the physical body develops in time, because life is a time process. Life forces are always processes in time and space. So the physical body appears in space, life appears through the time in space, has a beginning, has its end, has its ups and downs. And so we study very carefully the whole developmental capacities of a human being, the etheric forces, how they evolve during birth and death, and how to stimulate them best way by medicaments who work more process-orientated through certain rhythms. So we have a whole chronotherapy working with daily rhythms, with weekly rhythms, with monthly rhythms, annual rhythms, because all these endogene biorhythms of the body can be stimulated. And this strengthens the life capacity when you strengthen this rhythmic system, how we name it. And all our prevention concept, and we have in anthroposophic medicine primary prevention, not only reactive, secondary or tertiary prevention. We consider the whole education and self-education, self-management strategies as primary prevention. So we have developed a whole landscape of how to support from birth to adulthood the healthy development. And the goal of the anthroposophic educational system, which is mostly known as Waldorf education, the goal is to lead the educational process in such a way that it can give a healthy constitution for the whole biography. So we do not say we learn for life, but we support health for life. Yeah, because what we learn in school mostly we forget, but what remains is our experiences with the learning and how these experiences did somaticize and create our body and make us strong, inwardly vertical, or rather less vertical, or even undermined in our self-developmental capacities. So that is all this etheric aspect, how to stimulate life and healing forces. And the third domain is more the soul, the feeling life. We have in our terminology the astral organization as specific wording for this field. And astral means what we see in the heaven, the constellations. So the whole soul life develops in lots of constellations of work, of relationships, of destiny configurations. And we have all this to digest emotionally and to work with that. So our soul life develops in form of encounters. And the most sensitive thing is, how do I work in such a way with my relationships, with my encounters, that I can develop in my soul life positively and also help the other to develop positively. So we name this a good relationship if both can develop positively and learn from one another. And this goes through pain and through joy, we all know that. But it's not easy to find out how to do this best. And we have very good basic orientations because the anthroposophic medical concept is based on the philosophy of the German idealism. And this philosophy works with the ideals of truth, love, and freedom that is extremely basic in the whole idealistic philosophy of the 18th and 19th and 20th century. And Steiner himself wrote this philosophy of freedom, in which love and freedom are seen as two sides of the same concept. And the whole philosophical path goes, of course, towards truth. So that is the knowledge basis also of anthroposophic medicine. And it comes together with modern relationship research that a good relationship is if there is honesty, interest for the other, and respect for the autonomy of the other. And that is the search for truth, that is honesty. Interest is objective, unconditional love. And respect for the autonomy is the will to develop freedom, not only for me, but also for the other. And that is healing for the soul. That is extremely strength-giving for the soul life. And we use this in our biography work, where we help the people to digest their often very traumatic and difficult destinies. So we go back step by step to reactivate all these soul experiences and the traumatic aspects and try to find a new relationship to it so that the people start to be able to learn out of this again. Because in the moment, if you learn from a very bad experience, then you are looking for the truth in it or for the meaning of that. And then it can heal. Because when you have learned something, even from a very negative thing, then you feel better. You can say thank you for this negative event. If not, it will pain you whenever you think of it. But when you have learned something out of it for your own self-development, for your soul, then it enriches you. And so we try to heal the biography through emotional learning and transforming the soul to become more pure and tolerant and understanding and open and human, to humanize that process. And we have also, out of this basis, psychiatry, anthroposophic psychiatry, and psychosomatic and psychotherapy. So beside this biographical treatment, which is specific anthroposophic. And the fourth level looks at the patient from his identity aspect, from his ego level, from the personality. And then we look, how is the self-identification? How is the destiny identification? How is the identification with the profession, with one's family, one's partner, and with the time a person lives in? I found out that many people of our time live in depression because they do not understand anymore the time in which they live. They are traumatized just by corruption, by these killings, by that 1/5 of mankind dies from hunger or suffers from hunger. It is unbelievable, and I can understand that. It makes people really ill and depressed. So how to make these mankind's historical situations accessible for identification? This is my time. This is the mankind I belong. That is my folk. And what can I contribute, even in this large dimension, to the well-being? because I can only contribute to the well-being when I understand, when I relate positively. And we know from our medical experience that you can even define illness as an identification deficit. Yeah, because nothing weakens you more than if you are not identified with yourself. When you are battling against yourself, that makes you weak and causes negative emotions. And negative emotions are undermining immune competence, and an undermined immune competence makes you physically ill. So there's also a certain hierarchy, you know. Even if you have difficult circumstances, if your identification is good, you will cope. And then you can survive and keep your body healthy. And if not, yeah, it's quite bad. But then we have a last principle, a fifth one, and that is Paracelsus called the human being a pentagram. And from this aspect we can say the anthroposophic concept is a Paracelsic concept only for our century. Paracelsus spoke as fifth principle from the Quinta Essentia. Quinta Essentia means a healing essence which is not physical anymore. Paracelsus knew warmth processes who are healing. He knew air, inhalations and air processes who are healing. He knew hydrotherapy, water-based healing processes and remedies in drops and ampoules. No, ampoules I think were not yet found, but in drops and clysteres and so on. And he knew, of course, solid substances for healing, minerals and drugs, dry drugs. So these are quite good to understand. But he spoke also about a quinta essentia, a fifth principle of healing, which is purely spiritual. And this we call in anthroposophic medicine the spiritual orientation a person has. This has a huge effect on this person's identity and all the other levels of our human existence. So when you, for example, think Darwinistically, then you will have big difficulties to understand a human being which is maybe handicapped and not earning a lot of money, costing a lot, but creating in the social environment a total change. So this is an un-Darwinistic thinking coming from another spiritual orientation. When you look at a human being not only under the economic aspect, how effective are you, but when you look every creature, every human being, also as part of his context. And I met so many families, especially as a pediatrician, who have had this very painful experience with an ill or handicapped child, but then this child brought a total change of mentality, even of spiritual orientation, sometimes even changes of profession, sometimes even bringing in relationship a new, very human dimension, what is really worth in life. So I have realized that even severely handicapped children could teach their environment a total change of attitude, more than you can learn in every university. But this isn't seen. One only looks, oh, that is awful. I would never like to have that. So then rather I kill you, you know. But this sort of thinking is very unhuman from an anthroposophic human point of view. So therefore, we work with this spiritual orientation that every thought is a spiritual reality, and that the dignity of the evolution and of every creature in its environment is something I can learn to understand. And it is a culture of understanding. And that is the most powerful spiritual impact for healing. I can even say it is, we have this god of Mercury in medicine. It is a mercurial faculty, or better, the mercurial faculty number one. What you understand, you can carry, you can tolerate, you can help, you can work with. Understanding is the mercurial social healing capacity. And when you have a spiritual orientation which gives you the possibility to understand everything you want, you can become a healer and helper independent if you are a medical doctor or not. So we are looking for a spiritual orientation which gives sustainability in the whole healing process. And the better and congruent and integrative your worldview and your spiritual orientation is, the better it helps you for self-management, the more sustainability you have for your healthy development, independent from your startup. Some people are struggling with a lot of illnesses and problems, and when they start to develop a health-giving spiritual orientation, they become healthier and healthier through this sort of self-management. And this we use as well as a healing principle.
Could you just say a little bit more about what you mean by spiritual orientation? Could you just elaborate a little bit on that, what you mean by that?
Yeah, spiritual orientation has different levels. I would say every human being who is thinking has a spiritual orientation. Yeah. If I do think materialistically, I have the spiritual orientation of materialism. It shows me the whole world under a materialistic aspect. I can also have a religious orientation. I can be a Mormon or Catholic, have a Christian confession, and this colors my whole thinking and is then my spiritual orientation. Or I can go an esoteric path, be Buddhist, Shintoist, Zen Buddhist, or whatever, Taoist. So it depends the way I orientate my thinking by a certain stream, or religious teacher, or meditative teacher, or temple advisor, or starets in Russia. So either I have a person who gives me the orientation and I become student and follow, or I am part of a community with a certain spiritual orientation, or I build this up myself. And I'm anthroposophist because I wanted to build this up myself.
But that's part of a group to be an anthroposophist.
Well, there is a big group who wants to build this up itself. And I find anthroposophists like me everywhere on this globe where people are self-thinkers, independent where they are coming from. Because my family background was a Christian culture. My parents were Protestants, yeah. But I wanted to find my own way. And so many people are doing, and then they go either back into their churches or they connect with another stream. And I connected with this anthroposophic community because there I find many, many self-thinkers. Not all anthroposophists are self-thinker. Many are quoting Steiner and are appearing rather dogmatic. but that belongs to all groups that you have more or less self-standing people in, but all the anthroposophists are looking for this self-thinking, even if they have not yet developed this very strongly. And I myself, I'm also on the way. Yeah, I'm to a certain extent still a beginner. Yeah, self-thinking is really something very, very powerful. If you start to say, from now on, I carry self-responsibility for what I think and for what I do. Really, I identify. So that is a strong endeavor, a strong challenge. And yeah, everyone who is trying this knows we are beginners, or at least I am a beginner. So that is the first aspect, this decision, self-thinking, and not just copying what someone else said. Second is, when I am a self-thinker, then I discover my own development much more sensitive. So then the question, where do I come from? Why I am here? And where do I go? Becomes much more concrete and a really personal existential question. And then, for me, already in my early youth, I felt very, very strongly I'm not for the first time on this world. And I experience more and more, I would say today, rather 70 or 80% of all the people I know are meanwhile convinced that reincarnation is a fact. When I was young, it was a minority, maybe 20-30%. But today, it's just the other way around. I'm so astonished. You can talk with almost everyone about reincarnation today. But from the anthroposophic point of view, reincarnation has a lot to do again with this self-responsibility, because we look at the destiny really from this point of view when I am a self-thinker, when I am really self-responsible, when not the big authorities and spiritual leaders are responsible for me, but I myself are responsible as a spiritual being for my development. Then I have also to take the bitter pill that I am the creator of my destiny, that I am self-responsible for my destiny, and not bad people or the big divine power, and I'm just a marionette. Then I have to take this decision to look at my own destiny from this aspect. How was my last or before last incarnation that today I have to go as a follow-up through these specific experiences I am now in? Because then it makes so much more sense to understand my present life as a result from a past life, but also as a start up, a starting point for my next incarnation. So I can learn from my past incarnation and from my gifts and hindrances. By the way, I made a very interesting experience. When I talk with people, they feel already quite responsible for their gifts. Then they say, oh, that's what I did, or that's what I can, and that's my faculties. But for their failures, they accuse their body, hereditary, bad education, problems, people, not themselves. Yeah, so that is very nice. And if you have this anthroposophic orientation, then you need very honestly to confess, I am responsible for my weak points and why I choose this hereditary substance. This was my pre-birth choice. It's not an accident that I have this body. So it was my choice because out of my past incarnation, I was longing for such a body, for such a family constellation, for such an education, to make a useful, meaningful second next step of further development. And I have, or I can learn to identify with my weak points and my giftedness in balance. And this gives me then much more faculty and also tolerance to look at other people's destiny. That I, for example, if someone is criminal, I can ask myself, what did he miss in his early childhood, in his education, that he now has to go through these horrible experiences? Because the earth is the land of healing, of freedom, of help. So we come with our past destiny, which might be difficult. But if we meet, a total free space is there, and that is the present life. And Steiner's idea was, with the Waldorf School, to help specifically children coming from difficult circumstances, that they can become inwardly strong and handle their difficult destiny constellations best possible. So for him, education was also an assessment for destiny healing, destiny balance, because the destiny concept or the karma concept is, from the anthroposophic point of view, not at all fatalistic, total developmental orientated. If I created this myself, then I can also use my present time to change, to transform as much as possible, and to prepare for myself and others the best possible future. So it is a huge impulse for encouragement and social healing if we understand this destiny concept rightly.
As a doctor, how does this affect the way you work then, this perspective?
This is always my background, but I never talk, only if a patient is asking. For example, if a mother asks me, why has my child leukemia with 5, or diabetes from birth on, or another severe problem, then of course I must ask her back, what do you think where your child is coming from? So depending on the mother's or father's background, I then would ask questions. In one case, for example, I knew it was a Christian family not believing in reincarnation. So I just asked her if she has read the case stories in the Gospels, and if she has maybe discovered that there are 3 different types. One type is very personal. Christ asks, for example, the blind man from Jericho, what do you want that I shall do? And it's a very personal physician-patient contact, so to say. Other stories are so that only in the social environment a change takes place, like with the governor of Capernaum. Jesus does not see or is not seeing the patient. Only the Jewish representatives who are asking, and the friends of the governor. The governor is sending. So they have a dialogue with Jesus. And when Jesus then makes the decision to go and see the patient, then this governor says, I am not worthy that you come under my roof, speak only a word, and then my night will become healthy. So that is very interesting. So a reason why a child can be ill can be only that in the environment a change shall come. So I just raise questions to the mother when she asks why. Then I say, do you think it is the child's individual problem? Do you think it is your problem, dear mother? Are you suffering more than your child with this problem? Then it is yours. Then look. Yeah? And then there is a third type of case stories where Christ only speaks with the being of illness. And the social people around are even bad feeling and talking because he is healing on Shabbat. So even negative emotions are arising and no conversation with the patient. So a purely spiritual transformation takes place. So I raise questions, and if then a conversation evolves and the mother asks in this direction, then of course I share all my insights on reincarnation and karma and also what I think, quite openly, but not in the way that I say so it is, but as an option for her to find out herself if this thought suits. Because the spiritual world approaches us through thoughts and is everywhere and is our teacher. So we can offer thoughts, and every self-thinker can prove, does this thought suit for me? And then he is taught by the spiritual world itself and not by another human being. And that is the same with the whole destiny issue. We can offer Steiner's concepts, ideas, personal experiences, but optional and not definitive. Yeah.
Most people don't remember past lives. I mean, does that matter?
Well, there are pathways to remember past lives. Steiner gave quite a number of destiny exercises to find out, and we use also in medicine one very, also for diagnostics, very powerful, which has to do with these 5 aspects, because you can already in your actual life realize that what you identify with has an effect on your feelings, and how you feel has an effect on your life experience and strength. And the way you live affects your physical body. And when you work with this concept of past lives and previous lives, then you can ask yourself, how must have been my past life that my body, my physical body, this life is so? It's very practical. It's the result, yeah? Because what works already hierarchical in your personality in this life works through the course of incarnations. What you identify within one life has an effect on your whole astral body and soul configuration in your next life. And how you feel this life has an effect on your etheric body and your life circumstances next life. So this is one possible exercise.
Because people tend to think that our bodies are to do with hereditary and genes. I mean, that's the way most people are encouraged to think.
Yeah, but we know already today that the hereditary substance is an open system. Modern genetics is not working with a closed concept, because we know today that the genes are developing themselves, and there is the so-called epigenetic research, which makes research on the factors who stimulate the genetic hereditary substance to develop towards better and towards worser, creating certain character and well, aspects, attitudes. So the way you work with yourself has an effect on your genes, and your immunology, your immunological processes are changing your genetic patterns. So we know this today. It is a so-called learning open system as well. But
so we're not slaves of our genes then?
not at all, not at all. And Steiner had already this concept. He always spoke about that in the first 7 years of life, that we must help the child to transform and make his own best possible his genes. And therefore he wanted that we do not work immediately with anti-inflammatory or anti-fever drugs, because he said fever stimulates the immune system and helps the change of the genes towards the better. But modern immunological research is confirming this. So that is very interesting. And Steiner even has this perspective that between the incarnations, the unborn pre-birth soul is looking even for centuries sometimes to find the right hereditary stream to incarnate, to develop certain faculties as a musician or a specific mathematician. It's a very delicate thing to find the right genes and then transform and adapt best possible in the first years of life, so that you can really develop what you want to develop in one incarnation.
Can I ask you just last of all, because it is nearly time, I mean the film we're making is called The Challenge of Rudolf Steiner. What would you understand as the essence of that challenge?
Well, I think the challenge of Rudolf Steiner is that he lived and taught as a post-Christian initiate. And today, we do not accept initiates anymore. We love them in the past, but we don't accept them in present times. And he came with this will to bring the initiation knowledge into the academic world, to bring back truth, love, ethics, humanity in such a form into the academic world that you never look at facts and research questions in an unspiritual way. That everything you do in life can be also seen in the light of initiation, in the light of the spirit, of spiritual knowledge. So that every knowledge, the academic knowledge, knowledge of life, knowledge of social, the way you see yourself, self-knowledge, has always these two aspects, an material and a spiritual aspect. And that is extremely challenging, because it brings so much self and world responsibility into your whole life circumstances, and also a huge love for development. And many people do not like to develop. They want to be something, but not to become. And I find the biggest challenges is the challenge of becoming, the challenge of taking serious spiritual reality, and not say that is private, that is religion. That is the academic challenge, to take serious that we are spiritual beings and that the so-called cultural spiritual life is really spiritual. So to find academic concepts for spirituality, that was Steiner's academic challenge. And the human challenge is this developmental challenge, and the very personal challenge is to accept a spiritual hero without feeling small. It's a deep Christian impulse that someone has a huge wisdom and you can just learn to see him as a brother. And that's what Steiner wanted to be, a simple brother and lover of the human being. And that is also a huge challenge of modesty, and learning where a healthy self-consciousness is at home, in not making people big and adore them, not making them small and to make yourself big, but to learn this brotherly atmosphere that someone can teach whole mankind, but feels as human as you are, and can learn from you and you from him. So for me, that is the very biggest personal challenge, to see Steiner as a dear, dear fellow and to feel seen as such by him, who for me, of course, is still present, because if someone passes the threshold and prepares his next incarnation, he has a huge interest how his intentions are going on earth, and I find it challenging to think for Rudolf Steiner in that dialogical way, just thinking sometimes, what would you think? And then sometimes I get a good idea, and then I smile and think, maybe he inspired me, maybe not, but I have to prove if I really want to accept this thought or not.
Happy birthday.